Okay, let's get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Badix. I am co-director of the San Francisco Disability Cultural Center, and I am a huge comics fan. So I could not be more excited for today's program and for our panelists. We're going to use chat for this event. If that poses a hurdle for you, you can go to the accessibility settings under Zoom, unclick the boxes for public in meeting chat has been received. We've got a tight program today, so we may not be able to share all of what's happening in the chat aloud, but we will share out any key resources and links with you all afterwards in case you're not able to access that chat while our program is going on. If you have any tech needs, you can send a private message to me, again, Emily Badix, or you can email access@disabilityculturalcenter.org. We'll be checking in on that space and we can assist you there. So I am so excited to introduce our moderator and panelist today, Zareen Choudhury. She is doing some incredible work and storytelling with so much humor built into her comics and vulnerability. When I first saw it, I was just immediately excited for the event that would come someday. So here it is. I'm so excited to welcome you on, Zareen.
Hi, everyone. We're going to go ahead and start with image descriptions of myself and the other two panelists. So I'll start with myself. I'm Zareen. I am a South Asian woman with light brown skin. I have shoulder length black hair and I'm wearing glasses. I've got on a black t-shirt and a white vest with some black embroidery on it. And in my background is my bedroom. I'll pass it over to Mia next.
Hello, this is Mia. I have no sign name at the moment, so I just fingerspell my name, Mia. I have a white wall. Actually, maybe it's more like a light yellow wall behind me. I'm in an unfamiliar location, so still learning my surroundings, but I'm wearing a black top with a gray undershirt, and my hat is backwards, it's also black. I have dirty blonde hair, and yep, that's me. And I use she, they pronouns. Thank you.
And finally, Peace.
Hello, everyone. My name is Peace. I use they, them. Right before this Zoom started, the one lamp in my room went out. So you might hear a light bulb being changed by a dear friend in the background. There it goes. It's on. So for folks who didn't see, it was a little gray and now the light is back on. I am Peace. My pronouns are they, them. I am a light-skinned black person with a blue hoodie, blue beaded necklace, white beaded earrings with two cowrie shells, an orange and blue and black head wrap, and a white baseball cap with a decal that has the phases of the moon and mountains. And I have a bunch of stone rings and a snake ring on. And I'm also really excited to be here. That's me. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. All right, so now let's get to know each other a little bit better. So tell me a bit about who you are, where you're joining us from, if you feel comfortable, anything you want to share about your chronic illness or disability, and a little overview of what types of comics and zines you make. And we'll get into the more details about the comics and zines later. Um,
I can kick us off.
yeah, let's go with Peace first.
My name is Peace and I come from a performance background. But I've always loved visual arts and comics and my mother went to school for comics recently and we start to collaborate. So that was really my first introduction. I'm sorry, can you repeat the second part of the question, please?
Tell us where you're coming from, if you want to share anything about your disability or chronic illness, and just a little overview of the type of work you make.
Okay, thank you. I'm calling from New York, a recent move from the Bay Area, so please bear with me. I'm a little jet lagged, and exhausted, very exhausted. Part of my chronic illness, I believe I have had chronic illness since I've been a child, undiagnosed. But most recently, I've been dealing with long COVID, and so major dips and chronic pain, and learning how to show up with that, like not always present high energy when I'm not. So those are the main things that I deal with these days, and also CPTSD. My work right now is about that. Like my first zine is about long COVID, but I also have been designing stickers that are like a goal for what I want my zines to be, which is also about like Black history, Black arts and performance, and the intersections with like disability and time travel. So I hope to be able to do some fantasy stuff soon too. But that, yeah, I think that covers it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mia?
Hello. So, yeah, right now I'm in the Bay Area. So it's really beautiful here. Sorry, I forgot who was voicing for me for a second. Okay, I found the voicing interpreter. Okay. I attended RIT, which is Rochester Institute of Technology, and I majored in visual media. So I got to experience a lot of different mediums. And it's really funny because zines was not one of the mediums that I got to taste. I got close, but not quite there. Until when I was in Seattle, Washington, I learned about zines and I felt really connected, and the rest is history. It's a really great form to express myself and all of the frustrations. Oh, and by the way, I am deaf if it's not obvious. So, yes, anyway, yeah, so that's it. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to have this discussion.
Thanks, Mia. And I'm Zareen. I use she, her pronouns. I'm born and raised in the Bay Area and currently live in San Francisco. Very cool to have the DCC here in San Francisco. I um, Oh yeah, what types of comics and zines I make. So I am living with various forms of chronic illness, including some mobility limitations, gut stuff, skin stuff, the whole shebang. And my comics are usually come from my personal experiences, whether it is about chronic illness or about being Muslim and Bangladeshi American growing up here, or just about, being a person in this world. And I always try to approach my comics from a place of humor, to make them more approachable and accessible. Okay, so you both touched a little bit about how you started with comics and zines, how you're introduced to them. So I'd love to hear a bit more about that. What was your first interaction with comics and first interaction with zines? And then what was it that made you want to start making your own? All right, so I'll start with Mia for this one.
Sure. So, first of all, I don't strongly label myself as a cartoonist or a comic, but more like a wannabe. But yeah, I'm definitely in the learning process and have been, but I have a more strong graphic design background, but I kind of like a mix. And that's one reason why I really like zines so much, because it really can be anything. So the main part of my question just escaped me. Can you repeat the question for a second for me?
What made you want to start making your own comics and zines?
Yes, absolutely. Really, I grew up reading a lot of Calvin and Hobbes. Uh, in general, comics in the newspapers, the funnies, I loved those. So I always felt like there was a little bit of a gap. Like I can't reach exactly their level of expertise in illustration and drawing. And then that wasn't until my peers at RIT were talking a lot about zines, but the interpreters didn't exactly catch that. Not the interpreter here. I'm talking about in my classroom with my peers. The interpreter didn't catch the zine and didn't understand what a zine was. So it kind of just skipped my accessibility. So I wasn't involved in that. I missed that as my peers were talking about it, but I saw them being passed around. I saw the zines. I saw the little paper and I was like, these are really cool. I thought maybe they were booklets or something like that. And I was like, cool, they're little homemade books or booklets. That's neat. But then when I was in Seattle, I was going, in my day to day, and I just happened to see how strong the collaboration and zine community was very collaborative. And that was really inspiring for me. And that's when I was kind of like, wow, this is something really cool. Just seeing everyone able to express themselves at really low cost, too. That was amazing and unmatched. Yeah. So I have more to say, but I'll save it for later.
Um, Man, I'm so sad that you missed out on the opportunity to learn about zines when you were in college. And that's such a yeah, that's an unfortunate story about lack of access. Mhm.
Absolutely. Exactly. And I'll just add one more little comment related to that. By the time I learned of the word zine, I realized I had already been making zines for a really long time. I just didn't even know the word for it. And so I remember at like 5, I was making my own little kind of pretzel or puzzles. Sorry, interpreter error. So I was making my own paper puzzles and things like that at that time. And I think what made me really dive in to zines was realizing that communication with hearing people is something that this is kind of can be common ground. You read English, I can write English. So that's our common ground. And that's where that's kind of a meeting place for us. And so through this medium, I'm able to explain and expand a lot more on my culture without all of these gaps or language barriers.
That's beautiful. I like how you transformed it from what was like an access barrier into an actual bridge in communication. So that's awesome. And I'll go ahead and answer my response to the question. So actually, I also feel like I was accidentally making zines when I was a little kid. I was just looking back through my stamp collection that I had, and I had essentially made like a zine with different colored construction paper and put stamps on each page and written on it. I was like, wait, this is kind of my first zine. Um, and yeah, similar to you, Mia, my first introduction to comics was the strips in the Sunday papers. And I really loved reading those. And that's kind of, I think, where my early love of humor started. But I never really thought to make those on my own. It really wasn't until during the pandemic, really, that I I discovered cartoonists on Instagram and just kind of fell into that rabbit hole. And I was like, hey, maybe I can make these myself too. Um, and I just started with like little jokes because that was like all I knew, right? It was like the funnies. Um, and Initially, I was just making those all digitally and just posting them, on Instagram and whatnot. Um, so I actually only came into zines maybe like 2 years ago, and that was through, seeing SF Zine Fest come back and a lot more zine culture coming back in San Francisco. And that was when I started printing out my comics and actually having them in a physical format. But that's pretty recent for me. And now I'd love to hear from Peace about, we're talking about what was your first introduction to comics and zines, and then what made you start making them on your own?
Thank you. It's been really lovely to hear y'all's answers. It also, I wasn't going to mention this, but I loved you both bringing in childhood, like realizing that you also were making zines as a child. And it made me remember that I also was kind of making zines too. Like I remember I made one where each page was all the nail polish I had, and like I wrote like a mood and a little like horoscope for each color nail polish. So I guess there is like I might have to bring that back. But there are things like that that I really enjoyed as a kid. So I do feel like there is some, even though some of the topics can be heavy, there is some like whimsy and play that was part of my introduction. I also was part of a program as a kid called Willie Mae Rock Camp for girls. I think they changed it out to Willie Mae Rock Camp for children, but they we would make a band, and at the end of a week we would make a zine about like our lyrics and how we made the band, and that was really awesome. We also were never allowed to apologize if we made a mistake. We had to say I rock or something like that, which I thought was cool. um but yeah, so I think my introduction started in childhood and also reading comics. I also read the Boondocks. Maybe a little too early. It turned into a cartoon. I was probably too young to read those. But and then also being in the Bay Area with SF Zine Fest, and the work that my mother was doing, and just seeing people kind of be able to take their ideas and put them on a page or put them on a poster and do really creative things with zines. Had me wanting to be involved. So I feel honored to be with y'all because I'm a baby zinester. But I'm looking forward to, continuing to make and imagine and build community.
Yeah, so cool hearing how we all came from different places, but ultimately it was like people in our community that brought us to the zine world. And I think that really speaks to this medium. It is very collaborative and it's all about sharing with other people. Um,
I have something to say. This is Mia. And if you don't mind me stepping in for a minute, how did you two feel? I know I'm not the moderator here, but I'm just curious about how did you two feel with your first printing of your first zine? How was that moment for you?
Yeah, great question. And actually, maybe that segues us into the next question, which is to actually share our zines. So the ones that I wanted to share coincidentally are my first zine and the latest one that I've made. Um, so I'll also ask all of you to kind of provide image descriptions when you're sharing your zines. So the first one that I'm holding up that I made is called Fasting or No Fasting. It's a white cover with black line art on it. It shows a picture of a girl with glasses, someone who looks like me. Her head is in front of a spiral, and she's saying, "Sorry, am I stuck in a time loop?" So this comic that I made was inspired by a kind of absurd experience I had related to my chronic illness. So I was getting tested for lupus. I was getting a blood test for it, and it happened to be during Ramadan. So I was fasting for Ramadan, and I went in for the blood test. And everyone that I interacted with was so confused why I was fasting. They kept saying, "Oh, this wasn't a fasting blood test. Why are you fasting?" And I kept saying, "It's for Ramadan." And they were like, "What's that? What are you talking about? You didn't need to fast for this." And it just kept repeating and escalating until, well, spoiler, but I ended up fainting and passing out during the blood test. And and then I ended up having to break my fast because I was so dehydrated and there was so much going on with the healthcare professionals like not not being culturally aware of like what I was doing and why it was happening and not accommodating that. So yeah, this was the first comic I turned into a zine. I had originally made it as a online comic and then I printed it out. And so I just opened up one of the spreads and there's two panels on each page and simple black and white liner on them. Um, so that was my first one. And I'll show you the latest project that I've just recently worked on as well. Um, and actually, Peace is in this too. So what I'm holding up is a zine with a light green cover. The title is Tired AF, a collection of chronic illness comics. And there's a picture of, in black line art, there's a picture of a bed with some legs sticking out of it and fire. And so this was drawn by one of the contributors. And this is actually an anthology that I got to edit. And this is my first time editing for comics. Um, and so we put out a call for anyone with chronic illness to share their experiences through comics. And we ended up with an amazing, amazing collection ranging from endometriosis to spoon theory to fibromyalgia. And it's just an incredible collection, funny, sad, heartfelt. And Peace and their mom, Demetria, actually are part of this too. Um, so I'll use that to pass it on to Peace next to tell us about your zines.
Thank you. I wish I had a copy of Tired AF with me to show. But that was the second collaboration I think I've ever done. So yeah, thank you for I'm really glad to have been a part of it. And this zine is long COVID story short. It's a white zine, looks a little blurry. But it's a white zine with big black letters that say long story short, kind of in a wavy. The words are not all in one line. And then COVID is in purple letters. And then there's an image of me with like my hands out wide, kind of in a Y shape, and a bun and a white robe. And then there is uh like a dark purple diamond behind me and a light purple square behind me as well. And this was illustrated by my mother, Demetria Takumbo. And to kind of circle back to your question, Mia, as well, how I felt when I received the first printing of this, or when I first printed this,
Mhm.
I felt excited, nervous, probably like really vulnerable. Like, oh my gosh, did I just put like my business in this book? And am I going to, share this with folks and like sell it and exchange it? But I also felt excited because it was a long time coming. Like I'd been dreaming of it probably for 2 or 3 years and like been working on it in baby steps. Like I would fall asleep and be like, maybe I'll turn to this page. But I had this one image, and this is an illustration. It's in like grayscale of tortoises. And I hope they're helping each other. It seems they are, but it's a GIF that I saw a while ago, and there's tortoises, and one is on their back with their feet in the air, and the other tortoise kind of walks slowly over and helps them back onto their feet. And I just really loved that image, and so we put this in the zine.
Oh, that's so cute.
Thank you. And we put this in the zine because I was like, I need help right now. And I also know a lot of us do. And so because the story felt so heavy, um, also including images like that. Yeah, one more thing is that we also have coloring pages too, which was another idea because I was like, even making it, I was like, sometimes I needed a break from the content. And so there's me in the corner, um, highlighting some organizations that were doing some really awesome work around COVID, around accessibility and clean air. Um, and so we have, let's see, Clean Air Club, and sorry, I can't remember what else is on here, but I'll link a digital copy as well. And someone in the community is going to help us with image descriptions. So that's been really awesome too, to tap in other people for accessibility and support. And the last thing I'll share briefly is there's these sticker collages that I'm creating that I'm hoping to make into zines. And so this is a sticker I made. It's color of and kind of shiny of Octavia Butler, um, dark skinned black woman looking kind of off screen to the right. And there's some poppies and constellations and circles behind her. And then there's this writing that she did, in green, red, and blue. And it says, tell stories filled with facts, make people touch and taste and know, make people feel, feel, feel. So I want to do kind of like a writing, Black affirmation kind of zine. It's still in the early stages, but I made stickers first and hope that that progresses into a zine. Um, thank you. I'll pass to whoever's next. Thank you.
That's nice. So the first two, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm keep losing track of who is voicing for me. So I just had to make sure to check in. 2021, that was when I really understood the word zine. I had been moving along with it, and I had pretty much working all summer and working on art and different pages and just random things, nothing specific in any specific order. And I had tried to fit all of that into my original Autism 101 zine. And that used to be white. And then this one, oh, over time, well, really, my method for making this is more like collage, some drawing, some graphic design, because I had mentioned that I do have a background in graphic design. And so that just kind of mixed media. And I tried to fit everything that summer into this little zine. And it was really, there was just a lot in there. It was very, very messy, very confusing. And that's how this one came to be. All of that, well, not all of that, but most of that work ended up in this one. And so it's screaming into the void. And the image description, I'm sorry, I'm going to make sure to do this. So the cover is a mouth. It's in black and white and black print also, and they colored in the yellow with highlighter. And so the mouth is screaming upward from the bottom corner of the first page of the cover page. And there's kind of a static background. And oh, what else? What else do you need? What else would you like from me? I think maybe I lost track of the question. So if you could let me know what that is again.
Yeah, just sharing about your zines, whatever it is that you want to tell us about them.
Okay, so basically, both of these two are the first ones that I began with. That started the whole thing that I proceeded on from there. This is like 2.0, version 2.0 right here. Oh, and I want to give you a little image description for this one. There's a skull in here with random numbers, symbols, letters scattered all the way throughout it. And so that across the top, it says Autism 101, and it's typewritten font. And that's my favorite. It's typewriter font. And so with the stars 2.0, and at the bottom on the right corner, it says it's deaf, not death, DEAF, as in Frank, as not DEATH. And so, for whatever reason, a lot of hearing people struggle with that. And I have never understood. I took speech therapy, and I just am puzzled by the fact that people mistake deaf for death. And so it's deaf, not death. And that's my humor that I wanted to put in there. And I think that I come from a place of dark humor. So one of the most recent ones that I made is this one. And I don't want to lip read. It said I can't lip read, and that's the word that is crossed out. And it says above it, it says, I don't want to. The correction is, I don't want to lip read. And it's white, text based. And it's just, this one was created during a 2-day event. It was a fashion show in Seattle. And unfortunately, the host, who I've known for a while at that point, and they tended to force me to lip read. And I noticed that they were forcing other deaf people to lip read. And they knew that I can lip read some. So then they decided to depend heavily on that and force me to have to do that. So that was where that zine came from. One night, that first night of the event, I had just had enough of it. And I said, I don't want to lip read. And they're like, you can't lip read? And I said, no, I don't want to lip read. And there was a little bit of surprise, and they kind of scurried away from me at that point. But I was very emotional about it at the time. And so that was my first time to stand up for myself and make that statement. And I was busy at my table, and I couldn't lip read at the same time doing what I was supposed to be doing there. And so that night, before the second day, it was into the wee hours of the night, staying up all night. And I got my feelings out, typed those up. And by the second event, I had a new zine ready. And so that's what that is. And that's all for me right now.
Wow, that was really powerful hearing about all of your scenes that you've made. And I think the very obvious common thread here is that we all make work about our personal experiences with disability, with chronic illness, whether it's about expressing our frustrations or informing, educating other people about our experiences, or just trying to vent and rant about what we deal with. And I think that really speaks to the fact that comics and zines are such a popular medium for disability storytelling. And Peace, I wanted to ask you, what do you think it is about comics and zines as a format that make them so accessible, but also so ripe for this type of storytelling?
Thank you for this question. I think something, that came up when we were talking offline is at least something that resonates for me, and maybe it does for others too, is this different experience or relationship with time, and how um, I think for me, and I remember talking about this with Mia too, so part of me, like, for to bring in the long COVID story short, there were times when I was advocating for accommodations or remote learning, or I would say, my doctor says that if I get COVID again, I'll get very sick or could be lethal. And I was told, you must join us for lunch, or we're sorry about your anxiety. And it was just like so frustrating and disempowering. And I think something that the zine format gave was, in the moment, I felt I couldn't respond. I was too tired, or I was trying to pick my battles, or, like, conserve energy. And so the zine for me was a way of like circling back, or like I even love, Zareen, your cover with the spiral, because I'm thinking a lot about spirals and being able to play with imagery and to tell stories in a non-linear way. To also, I think, also as someone who has a lot of invisible disabilities, to be able to be like, this, you may not see it, but this is what it looks like, and to be able to have texture and color, um, and like script writing too, like conversations with other folks. And I hope to include humor as well, because I think also sometimes, like, when talking about chronic pain specifically, or things that are literally painful, to be able to infuse humor like visually, but also to make fun of folks too, to be like, this person made me feel disempowered in this way, and how can I kind of poke fun at this situation? And so those are some of the ways that I think zines, I think the other thing too is to also be able to work in short form, to like me, I loved your story of being like, and then I had by the second time you were tabling, you had something else. So to be able to have an experience and create something, um, sometimes quickly or slowly, like I just love the play with time that I think zines allow. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I think zines are really great for coping with anger as well. And I mean, we talk about invisible disabilities. It's just hard to talk about because it's invisible. And so it's really hard to exactly kind of, I don't know. Some days I can't believe how people, I mean, I can believe how some people can't believe that I'm deaf, if that makes sense. So, like, it just seems like, yeah, I mentioned a while ago, uh, talking about written text. And I know you will understand this. Like, that's kind of that common language that we share, like I was talking about with hearing people. And so, just briefly, in 2021, or let me back up, I started working at this place in 2020 and for as a photo scanning technician, which honestly was a really cool job. I was actually very surprised. But the interview process, they had no idea that I was deaf the whole time. I kept that confidential on purpose. I didn't want them to know the consequences. Or I didn't know what the consequences would be of disclosing my disability. And so I got the job immediately after college. So I felt like I was kind of on the right track. And then fast forward 6 months, they never provided an interpreter, even though at the interview they did, because I basically caught them, or sorry, I mean, I didn't mean to say caught, but kind of on the third phone interview, like on the telephone, that was when I let them know, or maybe it was after we had made the appointment. There was a bunch of kind of miscommunications, and then I got the job and I got scheduled to have a tour. And that's when I finally let them know, like, oh, by the way, I'm deaf. Do you mind to provide an interpreter and book an interpreter for that? And they were kind of like speechless. They didn't know what to say for a minute. They were kind of just standing there. And I was like, hello, hello. And I said a few times, and they're like, oh, yeah, 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 of course, of course, of course. We work here as family. We'll bring an interpreter. And then 6 months later, I was doing all of this work for team meetings on a weekly basis. And they just kept having excuses and all of these things for not providing interpreters. And then, you know, I'm sorry to like wrap up the story in a strong way, but I got arrested because they told me that I was trespassing in a situation. This situation really escalated very quickly because I was typing and they started to take away the keyboard from my station and they were taking away all of these things. And I was like, no, I need this because I have to communicate. And then they had scheduled an accessibility meeting, a meeting about accessibility is what I mean. Uh, and it was hosted by HR and all of these things. There was this whole meeting scheduled about accessibility, and they still didn't even provide an interpreter for that, which I had already requested. And it was just ridiculous. It was the same cycle again and again and again. And so eventually I showed the ADA law section, and they kind of freaked out and called the cops on me and accused me of trespassing. So that was a really traumatic experience of discrimination and all of these on many, many layers. And so the zines kind of came out about a year later. And that was just telling people what I think and what I think hearing people need to know. So, yeah.
Wow, that is so awful. That is so terrible. I'm really, really sorry that you experienced that. Yeah, it sounds very traumatizing. But I hope the experience of making the
Yeah, I mean, the cops and the relationship between cops or law enforcement and deaf people has been really complicated for many years. Shootings and all of these things because of language in access or miscommunications or misunderstandings with language. So, I mean, yeah, the way that they blame me for trespassing, it was really eye opening to what, many people in other experiences, uh, when we experience police brutality like that. It just really opened my eyes as a white person, even to experience. And yeah, it's just, anyway, the whole point is zines came from that and really helped me cope with all of those feelings ever since.
yeah, that's a really, really powerful way to use the medium and the art as a way to kind of both express your rage and your frustration as a venting mechanism, but also as a way to kind of educate other people about this experience that you had, educate people about what you deal with, and have other people like kind of create more community around it, you know? And yeah, I think that's a really, really powerful example of what zines can do for us, right? As disabled, chronically ill people. Um, and yeah, I really especially liked what both of you said
And
about,
it gave me a new job.
oh, yes, we love that. Um,
It gave me a new job because I wasn't able to get one after this quote unquote trespassing on my record. It was really stupid. It was not even
ugh,
like I couldn't even get a job at DoorDash or anything. I was super stuck. And so, yeah, yeah. But it kind of gave me a job. That's the point when I started doing zines.
yeah, yeah, I'm so angry on your behalf that they did that. But it's amazing how you are able to use art to create a new opportunity for yourself. And yeah, I really liked what both Peace and you said about these comics making the invisible visible, and also about the way comics allow us to kind of play with time, and go outside of the normal bounds of time and space. Um, and as well as Peace's point about how you can sort of break through the normal gatekeeping of traditional publishing, like the way Mia was able to just like put something out the day that something happened. Normally with most other types of media, writing a book, publishing, etc., you kind of have to go through all of these barriers, and it takes a lot of time as well as connections and privilege. And so, in many ways, scenes are very equalizing. But at the same time, it is a very visual medium. And, that does make it in other ways less accessible for people who are blind or low vision. So I'm curious to hear how you think about um, access in your own work. And Peace, I remember you mentioned working with someone to add like image descriptions. And so I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so yes. So someone in community in the Bay Area actually was talking with my mom and was like, this is something that they do, I think, professionally. And so they've offered to do a version of our zine and add image descriptions, which I thought was really awesome. It'd been something that was on my to-do list. And I think, in terms of, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the word, but like when access needs can clash, right? Being like, I have the intention to do this, and I'm also hella exhausted. And so to be able to be like, I don't have to do this on my own, but community can come through and support. And so we're in the process of doing yeah, image descriptions, and also want to do audio. an audio version. I remember there was a time when I had a really severe crash with long COVID, and I wish I could remember whose zine it was, but on SoundCloud they like opened the zine and they described opening it and they described the texture of the page and they described like in such beautiful detail like the process of opening the zine as they were also reading the zine. And that is something that I would love to offer, like do in my work and maybe even collaborate with folks on that too. So those are some things I'm thinking about, but I also want to be like in conversation with folks who are most impacted too and see what folks are doing and learn more as well.
That's really cool. I haven't encountered something like that where someone's actually like describing that physical experience of touching and, flipping through a zine. So that's actually really cool to hear about that. Um, Mia, I was wondering if you had anything to add about how you think about access in your work.
Yes. So I'm friends with many deaf-blind people, and I've learned a lot from them. So right now, I would not say that I am an expert with the visual description. I would say no, not so, but I am in process of learning it, and it's definitely developed as a habit in me in Instagram. So in social media, you can see it on Instagram. It's and developed a habit there doing that, but also this one, I did add the image description for one small cartoon that's in here, and I'll show it to you. This one's right here. And the image description is this paragraph at the bottom. And it's a small comic strip. But I felt like that it was hard to actually read through it and then add that paragraph at the bottom. But some deaf-blind friends let me know that I added too much personality to the image description, that it wasn't factual enough. I'm the one who was the artist. And so there was a little too much me in there, maybe. And so I realized that it's kind of silly how that's the only page that has image description and for the entire rest of the zine. So that, so I tried to use Notepad and type that up after I actually made the zine and then have that ready as a backup when anyone asked for that in particular. And a few times, or actually one time when I had just made a new zine and I had not yet had it ready, and then a deafblind person asked for it. And I said, okay, I'm going to go ahead. And then that night, overnight, again, working all night, typing that up, that image description. That is a lot of work, I must say. So I mean, deaf people already are adding captions, and most people, not all, but also, I just want to be clear on one thing. Social media in the deaf world and social media in the hearing world are completely different. It's like night and day. And so signing vlogs, which are video logs, are very, very different than blogs. And so describing things visually, actually, what I am trying to say is that is a learning process for all of us, for deaf people as well. And so we are already providing accessibility in one way that we know works for us, and that's just captioning, and that's for sighted deaf people. And then the caption, oh, that's enough. But then if you have deaf blind people that are like, no, that is not enough. We need something else. And then you have to kind of really look into it and figure out how to do that. And I guess you would call it sighted fragility, that we really have to look in that and look at our privilege as sighted people and look at that process. Audio descriptions as well. And for me, I had several projects that were not personal projects, but projects I worked with other people, and I worked with audio, and I used video wavelengths, and the interpreter was there as well. So it was hard because I had to bring together a lot of things. And so continuing to think about it, like a birthday card, for example, or a card. that you open it up that has music. You know those musical cards, the ones you open that have songs? And I had to learn the mechanism of that technology. As you open the card, it sings. I want to learn that. And this is for a future project. This is a dream project in the future, to learn what the actual mechanism is behind that. And that a new zine or something, whatever I would make, that somebody would be able to speak, and then you could open it up just like those cards and have that sound be provided as well.
Well, that would be really cool. I would absolutely want to learn if you figure out how to do that. Because, yeah, that would just make zines that much more accessible for everyone.
Oh yeah, and I also want to learn Braille. I've already learned a little bit myself. I've used the Braille machine in the past. Or yeah. So again, I'm still learning. I'm still in the learning process with so many things. I am lucky to be around people who have those tools so that I can just touch on each of them and learn something from it. And to make a continual habit for all of my zines to not have those weaknesses of inaccessibility in any way.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely a very hard process. And I think that's echoed in what both of you have been saying. There isn't like an easy and quick solution that works for everyone. And yeah, it's definitely a learning process. But it's cool to hear how many different people are thinking about this, and more people are thinking about it. And the creativity that we bring in this community to allow everyone to access our work. Um, so I see we're a little bit getting close to time, so I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit, and I want to talk about zine fests, because zine festivals are a really big part of the zine community, and that's kind of a big place where people discover zines. That's sort of how I got introduced to them in the first place. It's one of the biggest places where we can actually share our work and meet other people, both other creators as well as other readers. Um, and while they are really awesome for bringing people together, um, they're not always the best experience for those of us with disabilities. So I'm curious to hear from you, Mia, because I know you've been to some Zine Fest. How has that been for you as a deaf person? At Zine Fest, and are there things that you want to see done differently?
Hmm. I'm very blessed to have the experience of traveling around to different zine fests. I never imagined that that would be something I'd be able to do, but I have. And a lot of zine fests, masks are required, and that is completely understandable. But mm, just like people who wear masks, sometimes I really that's the responsibility for you to actually try to communicate with them as they have masks on. And many people actually still ask me if I can lip read, even though they're wearing a mask. Through the mask, they're asking me that. And so I've learned, I get asked that over and over again. And so then I have learned how, talk about how to lip read, learn by learning the shape of the mask. You understand? Seeing how it moves and just practice that skill. And so that's one struggle that I've experienced in some of the Zine Fest. And that is why I also have developed a system for myself. At my booth, I have a sign, a conversation starter sign. And it says that, oh, wait. It says, did you know that sign language was banned worldwide since the 1880s? And so most people were just surprised to see that. They said, no way, I have absolutely no idea of that. And so then I would show them my zine, and it's kind of like an elevator pitch, almost like that, because this information is free for everyone, and I want to make sure that everybody has this knowledge, and why it makes sense, and why the sign language is not the same right now, and it's the standardization of sign language. And Alexander Graham Bell everyone knows Alexander Graham Bell, and they think, oh, he invented the phone. That is so amazing. There's a lot more than that to Alexander Graham Bell, and he did a lot of harm. And so I don't need to go off on that right now, but you can read about it. And at my booth, this is my conversation starter. And I'm thinking maybe that I'll change it up a little bit to a different conversation starter, a different conversation, and a later project. But that's something that I've had all along, and it works great. And before, I used to have paper and pen ready, but then I felt like that people would start to depend on that and depend on me for that. And so I kind of took those away, removed those so that people wouldn't be able to use them. And I'd show other zines that I'm out of right now. And it shows how people feel less awkward around deaf people. That's one. I don't have them right now, but that's one that I've written. And it shows communication methods with clear pictures so people feel more comfortable. Use paper and write, even toilet paper if that's all you got. Phone, your computer, your laptop, anything. Just be creative. You can use anything to communicate. And we deaf people, all this time, we know how to navigate all of those things. And so really, it's a learning experience for them, for the hearing people. So I am always prepared to teach, really. Not teach ASL. Well, not really clear about that. I'm not teaching people ASL. No, that's not what I'm doing. Uh, so, yeah, I think that's all for now.
Yeah, that was so.
I'm so sorry. One more thing. I just looked over, and really what I want to be different is for the host of the event. You know, people are communicating, people are milling around, and that's fine. That is beautiful, and that's perfect. But they are the guests, and I serve them. And the host, if the communication breakdown exists with the host, then it makes the whole event and the whole experience difficult, especially if they're walking around with a microphone or a megaphone. They're walking around with this, and then they're just assuming that everyone in the room can hear them. And that makes the situation stressful and makes me feel a little bit of anger. And so I'm in professional mode. So I have to make sure, and I also have an invisible disability. So I have to continue to be professional. So sometimes that makes it difficult. And afterwards, then I set up the table and I get that done. And if I have time left, then I probably try to go and give some feedback to the host about that, because I just want to repeat that I would love for this to happen more accessibility, have captions ready right there from the beginning, and don't just assume. And I should just be able to assume that they would have an interpreter. If there's a lot of speaking, if there's a lot of poetry, if there's a lot of reading, that's something that I would love to just assume is there. Don't wait until somebody requests that. Have that from the beginning, because it's messy that way if you wait until it's needed. And so just and assume that you will have deaf people visiting. Just assume that from the beginning.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that experience. I see we're right at time, so I'm going to end with our final question, which I think really wraps up everything we've been talking about, which is how do you find the time and energy to even do your creative work while we are all dealing with the trials and tribulations of being disabled? And I'll start with my answer and then pass it over to Peace. I I mean, it is very, very exhausting to, find a way to make money and also deal with your disability. And then on top of that, somehow finding the time to do something joyous, do something creative. And I will say it is very challenging to do that, to make the time and space for it. And I'm certainly not an expert at it. But I think something that has helped me is just like getting better at understanding your own limits and also learning to recognize when you have hit your limits or when you are approaching your limits and being really honest with yourself about that. And also getting really good at resting, something I've gotten much better at. And so I really can't keep up like a consistent creative practice that maybe many other people might be able to. And I've sort of accepted that I will have those ebbs and flows with my energy levels and what I'm able to do. And so just being okay with listening to and respecting my body's needs as they come up has been helping me. And Peace, how about you?
Thank you so much for this question and for your answer. I feel like I'm taking mental notes because I'm so exhausted right now. And I'm also, I'm chronically ill and also a single parent. Um, and also dealing with major brain fog and exhaustion. And so I feel like I'm, to be honest, always at my limit, which is kind of why I made this scene too. The first scene, because I've witnessed also like, trigger warning, content warning for Black death and chronically ill death of folks, but witnessing Black folks with long COVID crowdfunding for survival or just disabled folks, Black disabled folks specifically crowdfunding for their survival, and then seeing them being largely ignored until they're dead. And then all of a sudden the funds come rushing in, and it's like we have to bare our souls to get the support that we need. I actually just wrote an essay about it, so there's a Substack I'm gonna post, and but that's part of what motivated the zine. But to answer the question, more full comment too. Thank you, baby. Thank you. Um, so the other thing that I wanted to say too is I was in a dance performance and they were talking about a football players who when they're injured can like imagine themselves.
My name is Asha.
Thank you, Asha. I'm almost done, okay? Can I give you a kiss? Mm. So when they're injured, imagine themselves playing and it still does something when they're on the field. Now, I'm not a football player at all, but sometimes like I do get heartbroken when I have all of these ideas and can't do them. And so sometimes I'll lay down and I'll just, if I have to lay down, I'll imagine writing or I'll imagine what I want to create. And I feel like that also is part of the process, even if I'm not at my laptop or drawing, but like if I have to close my eyes or even if I'm parenting, can I make a voice memo? Can I sing it, while I'm cooking? Can I, think about it while I'm laying down? And so those are some of the things. And also, I'm quickly going to put some links in the chat. I didn't get to shout out some folks, so I want to put that in the chat for folks. And maybe if we send a post-event email, that would be awesome too. Thank you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much. Emily, I'll hand it over to you.
So I really love the rush, but we have a little bit more time because we get to go till 5:15. I just need the last couple.
Oh.
So we can do a couple audience questions as there is a very active, exciting chat. Lots of folks have shared their work. And just a reminder, if you want to share your work, we will send it out to everybody after. So you don't need to worry about capturing the links right now. There was a question for you, Mia, when you were talking about your really horrible employment discrimination case. If you're familiar with the organization HEARD in DC, that's HEARD.
Yes, I am. I have friends who work there. Yeah, I do. It's HEARD is, yeah. I'm trying to remember the specific how to expand on the acronym, what it stands for, but they typically support deaf people or deaf individuals and deaf inmates. And so that they focus more on deaf inmates. And my situation was a little bit different. So, but yes, fortunately, I was not in jail or I was not incarcerated. I was not detained. So I just experienced the police brutality just in those few moments in that 1 hour. And yeah, but HEARD, thank you. Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. And EEOC. equal employment. Center, something center. Um, it seems like EEOC also hasn't been doing anything, which is strange. So yeah.
Thank you. That O is for opportunity. We're getting help in the chat. Ty has a question.
Right. Yes. Opportunity.
Ty has a question for Peace. They asked, how does growing your community of disabled friends and kin inform your work at this time?
Thank you for this question, Ty, who happens to be one of my disabled friends and growing kin. We were in fellowship together. Currently, it's wrapping up, but sorry, there's a lot happening in my room right now, and I'm nearing the end of my energy window. Thank you for the kiss. But I love this question. I think that
Oh.
By
the way, my okay, what do you well ASL name is because it's kind of like A jumping up, up, up a lot. So that's what it is.
Thank you, Asha. I love you.
Bye.
Yeah, I think even being a parent too is part, I feel like being a parent, growing disabled, friends and kin has helped me have a different relationship to care, to pace. I think even prior to building community with folks, I might not have shown up to a panel like this as tired as I am, or as fatigued as I am, or as in pain, because I think a lot of times in temporarily abled spaces, right? You have to show up with this idea of perfection, and create with a certain idea of, having it together. And so I feel like um, growing my community of disabled friends and kin has also enabled me to work, period, because I'm resisting isolation. Um, and I'm so excited about collaboration. Like even in the chat, like Sabrina Sims, I'm excited to hope maybe collaborate with her. Or, I'm excited about like Ty, who asked this question, like being able to feature your work in my zine. And like, yeah, I'm excited to build with folks, laterally. And I'm sure I have more to say to that question, but for now. I'll step there. Thank you. Thank you, Ty.
Thank you so much. And I just posted in the chat that if somebody wants to ask a question aloud or on screen, you can use the raise hand function. We have chance for one more question. Until I see that, I'll just also give a recap of some of what we're seeing in the chat, which is so much love for this panel from some of the people who had to jump off. There was immediate excitement. And I see that Ty has a question. Go ahead. Oh, no. Now go ahead.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. Hey everyone. My question is, if you were releasing or had to release a zine in the next week, what would your topic be?
About the heat wave that we're going through right now. Because that is top of mind and top of body for me right now.
I would make, well, actually, I am working on one right now, so I'll use that. A dog park review because I'm traveling right now and my dog has really liked a lot of different spots and we've hit a lot of different spots. So I will have a zine about that next week.
Briefly, mine would be a time travel zine about the 1920s and like compared to now. Because the president at the time, I don't remember his name, but he made a speech after the 1918 flu talking about being back to normal, talking about the return to normalcy. And so I would kind of do a back and forth between what art and the blues and disability was happening then and kind of maybe bridge it to now in some time travel magic ways too. I don't know if I could do that in a week, but that's what I would want to do.
Well, thank you all so much. Oh, one sec. Let me get a spotlight going. All right. This has been a really exciting conversation. I could talk about comics a lot more. And if you all want to keep talking about comics a lot more, we have a thread on our Discord channel. That's dcc.page/Discord, where you can keep it going. Share the best stuff you're finding and share your stuff that you're making so that we can all enjoy it. We have a bunch of upcoming events in the next few months. We are always active and doing a lot of exciting things over here, including a series of writing workshops if you want to work on some of your comic and zine content there. So we're going to drop the link to our link tree in the chat where you can sign up for our newsletter, sign up for our events, and more. We are really grateful to the panelists today and this incredible conversation we got to have and learning from you all. And this program is possible because Elsie and Lily Cox Haven of Hope, which is the host organization of the Disability Cultural Center, with financial contributions from the City of San Francisco's Human Service Agency's Department of Disability and Aging Services. Thank you to our access team. Thank you to all of you who are with us, and so many of you shared your work. We're excited to go forth and read in the sun. So thank you all and have a very great day.
Thank you.
Thank
Mia saying thank you. Bye.